The emergency room waiting area at Prescott Memorial smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee, and charge nurse Elena Marsh had learned to tune out both a long time ago. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind that started slow and always ended in chaos, and Elena moved through the rows of blue vinyl chairs with the quiet efficiency of someone who had walked this floor 10,000 times before. She was 38 years old, her blonde hair pulled back in a loose knot that had mostly given up by hour 9 of her shift, and if you asked anyone in this hospital what they knew about her, they would tell you the same 3 things. She never raised her voice. She never missed a vital sign. And she never, ever talked about her life before nursing school. Elena liked it that way. She had built a wall around the years before Prescott Memorial, brick by brick, and nobody on this floor had ever gotten past it. Not her coworkers, not her supervisors, not even the man she'd almost married 4 years ago, who left because he said loving her felt like loving a locked door. She didn't blame him. She had a lot of locked doors. At 6:47 p.m., the automatic doors at the front of the ER hissed open, and 8 men walked in wearing Desert Tan combat fatigues, their boots heavy on the tile, their presence swallowing the room whole. Conversations died. A woman in a purple sweater near the back wall went rigid in her seat, her eyes locking onto the lead man like she recognized something in the way he moved. The men didn't sit. They didn't approach the registration desk. They simply stood near the entrance in a loose formation, scanning the room with the kind of practiced awareness that told anyone paying attention these were not ordinary visitors. The man in front was broad-shouldered, mid-30s, with a jaw that hadn't been shaved in days and eyes that swept the waiting room like he was still clearing a building. His name, though nobody in that room knew it yet, was Master Chief Daniel Reyes, and he had flown 22 hours to get to this hospital because his nephew was somewhere inside it, and nobody would tell him anything. That was when the boy collapsed. He'd been sitting 3 rows back, a freckled kid of maybe 11 wearing a rust-orange shirt and a denim jacket too big for his shoulders, waiting with his mother for a scheduled appointment that had nothing to do with the chaos unfolding around him. 1 second he was fidgeting with the zipper on his jacket, and the next he was sliding sideways off the chair, his lips already turning a faint shade of blue, his chest hitching in short, useless gasps. His mother screamed. The sound cut through the waiting room like a blade, and for half a second nobody moved. Not the frightened civilians, not the 8 soldiers standing by the door, nobody except Elena. She was across the room before her own mind caught up with her body, dropping to her knees on the hard tile beside the boy, her hands already working before she'd even finished her assessment out loud. "I'm a nurse. I've got him. Someone get me an oxygen tank and the crash kit from Bay 2, now." Her voice cracked through the waiting room with an authority that made 3 separate people scramble to obey without question. She tilted the boy's chin, cleared his airway, pressed 2 fingers to his throat and felt a pulse that was racing and thready and wrong. Anaphylaxis, maybe, or a cardiac event or something with his airway closing from the inside. She didn't have time to guess, only to act. Her gloved hands moved with a precision that looked less like hospital training and more like something forged somewhere far more violent. She positioned the oxygen mask over his face with a snap-tight seal, her other palm pressed flat against his sternum, counting under her breath, her eyes never leaving his face even as chaos churned around her. Master Chief Reyes had gone still. He watched her hands. He watched the angle of her wrist as she cleared the airway, the exact pressure point she chose without hesitation, the way she called out vitals and clipped, economical phrases that wasted no syllables. Something in his chest tightened, an old and specific recognition, like hearing a song in a language he hadn't spoken in years. He turned slightly toward the man beside him, a broad-necked operator named Cole, and said only 2 words, low enough that no one else could hear. "Watch her." Cole's eyes narrowed, and he watched too. Not the boy, not the panic, but Elena. The way she moved, the way she didn't move. The boy's chest hitched again, then caught, a wet ragged breath pulling through the mask, and his blue-tinged lips began, slowly, to pink. Elena didn't celebrate. She didn't exhale in relief the way the mother did, sobbing now, clutching the boy's hand. Elena simply kept working, checking his pupils, murmuring reassurance to him in a voice that had gone soft and warm, utterly unlike the sharp commands from seconds before. It was the contrast that struck Reyes hardest. He had seen combat medics do exactly that. Turn brutal efficiency on and off like a switch, hard hands and a gentle voice, because the job demanded both and only certain people could hold both at once without breaking. "Chief," Cole said quietly, stepping closer. "You seeing this?" "I'm seeing it," Reyes said, and something in his tone had changed entirely. He wasn't looking at a hospital worker anymore. He was looking at the ghost of someone he thought he'd buried a long time ago. The ER team arrived seconds later with a gurney, and Elena rose smoothly from the floor, giving a rapid handoff to the incoming doctor in the clean clinical shorthand of her profession. And just like that, the moment closed. The boy was wheeled toward the trauma bay, his mother running alongside, and the waiting room slowly exhaled, conversations resuming in nervous, relieved murmurs. Elena stripped off her gloves and turned to walk back toward the nurse's station like nothing extraordinary had happened at all. She made it 4 steps before Master Chief Daniel Reyes stepped directly into her path, close enough that she had to stop, close enough that the rest of his team went utterly silent behind him. He studied her face for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice was low, careful, almost reverent, like a man asking a question he already feared the answer to. "Where did you learn to do that?" Elena's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes did. A flicker, gone almost as fast as it appeared, the exact flicker of a person who has spent years making sure that question never gets asked. "Nursing school," she said evenly. "Excuse me." She stepped around him and kept walking, but Reyes didn't move for a long moment, staring after her. And when Cole finally spoke beside him, his voice was barely a whisper. "Chief, that hand placement, that was combat trauma protocol. Nobody teaches that in nursing school." Reyes said nothing. He simply watched the doors swing shut behind Nurse Elena Marsh, and for the first time in 11 years, he felt the cold certainty that he had just found something, someone he had spent over a decade searching for. If a story like this pulls you in, hit subscribe now, because Chapter 2 is where everything Elena has hidden finally comes to the surface, and you will not want to miss a second of it. Elena didn't sleep that night. She told herself it was the adrenaline from the code in the waiting room, the kind of shift-ending jolt that took hours to fade from a nurse's bloodstream. But she knew better. It was his face, the way Master Chief Reyes had looked at her, not with suspicion, not with curiosity, but with recognition, the specific and terrifying recognition of someone who had once known exactly who she used to be. She lay awake in her small apartment on the edge of town, staring at the ceiling fan turning slow circles above her. And for the first time in 11 years, she let herself think about Task Force Meridian. She had been 26 then, a combat medic attached to a joint special operations unit, the only woman most of those men had ever trusted to patch them back together in the field. They called her Doc, never Elena, and she had pulled 7 men out of a collapsed compound outside Kandahar under fire that should have killed all 8 of them, including her. She remembered the weight of a dying man's blood on her hands, remembered the specific silence that follows an explosion, remembered the commendation she never picked up because by the time it was awarded, she had already left the military, already changed her name from Elena Voss to Elena Marsh, already buried that entire chapter of her life so deep she thought no one would ever dig it back up. The unit had scattered after that final deployment, reassigned, redeployed, some of them killed in operations she never heard about because she'd cut every thread connecting her to that world. She told herself it was necessary. She told herself the woman who did those things and the woman who wore blue scrubs at Prescott Memorial were 2 different people, and one of them had to stay buried for the other to survive. She hadn't expected Task Force Meridian to walk through her hospital doors 11 years later. The next morning, Master Chief Daniel Reyes was waiting in the hospital's front lobby before her shift even started. Still in the same fatigues, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept either. He didn't approach with force. He approached the way a man approaches something fragile that he's terrified of shattering. "Doc," he said quietly, and the word landed on Elena like a physical blow, because nobody had called her that in over a decade. She stopped walking. Her hand tightened around her badge lanyard. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice wavered on the last word. "Just slightly, just enough." "Kandahar, the compound collapse." 7 men, 1 medic, 17 hours pinned under fire. Reyes stepped closer, his voice dropping to something almost broken. You pulled my little brother out of that rubble, Elena. Marcus Reyes. He used to talk about the medic who wouldn't stop working on him even after the CO called it, who kept doing compressions until she got a pulse back that everyone else had already given up on. His jaw tightened, his eyes glassy in a way that looked profoundly foreign on a man built like a weapon. Marcus died 4 years later in a training accident stateside, but he used to tell that story every single Thanksgiving. About the medic who refused to let him die. I've been trying to find her for 11 years. Just to say thank you. Just to tell her what those extra years with my brother meant to our family. Elena's composure, the wall she had spent a decade constructing brick by careful brick, didn't crumble all at once. It cracked slowly, silently, the way ice does before it finally gives way beneath your feet. Her eyes filled, and she pressed the back of her hand hard against her mouth. And for a moment she was not charge nurse Elena Marsh of Prescott Memorial. She was Doc, 26 years old, elbow deep in a 19-year-old soldier's chest cavity, refusing to accept that today was the day she lost someone. I remember him, she whispered. I remember all of them. I think about that day more than anyone here would ever believe. Then why did you disappear? Reyes asked, not with accusation, but with genuine, aching confusion. The Army gave you a Silver Star citation. You never came to collect it. You changed your name. You vanished so completely that a full team of operators with every resource in the world couldn't find you for over a decade. Elena wiped her eyes and looked at him with the exhausted honesty of someone who has carried a weight alone for far too long. Because when I came home, I didn't know how to be both people at once, she said. The medic who could hold a man's life together with her bare hands, and a person who could just live a normal life, buy groceries, fall asleep without hearing gunfire. I thought if I buried Doc completely, I could finally just be Elena. I didn't realize that saving people wasn't something I did. It was something I am. I couldn't outrun it even if I tried. Yesterday proved that better than anything. Reyes nodded slowly, understanding settling over his face like something heavy finally set down after a long march. You didn't just save my brother 11 years ago, he said. You saved that little boy yesterday in front of 40 strangers without a second's hesitation, still moving like the best combat medic I have ever served alongside. That's not something you buried, Elena. That's something you carried the entire time, whether you admitted it to yourself or not. Word spread through Prescott Memorial fast after that morning. Not through gossip, but through quiet, reverent whispers among the staff who had watched a decorated Navy SEAL stand in their lobby and call their charge nurse Doc with tears in his eyes. Elena's coworkers began looking at her differently, not with suspicion, but with a new and profound respect, understanding now why she moved through codes with a calm no classroom could teach. The hospital administrator eventually reached out to the Department of Defense, and 3 months later, in a quiet ceremony that Elena almost didn't attend, she finally accepted the Silver Star she had left unclaimed for over a decade, with Master Chief Reyes and the surviving members of Task Force Meridian standing in the front row, several of them owing her their lives twice over, once on a battlefield, and once simply for staying alive long enough to be found again. Elena Marsh still works the ER at Prescott Memorial today. She still wears blue scrubs, still ties her hair back in that same loose knot, still calms frightened children with a voice that somehow holds both steel and softness in the exact same breath. But she no longer hides the years before nursing school. She talks about Doc now when someone asks, and she keeps a small photo of Marcus Reyes in her locker, a reminder that the hardest thing she ever did wasn't saving lives in a war zone. It was learning to stop running from the person capable of doing it.